Good morning, it's Mrs. Rouse, and right now I'm going to talk about an introduction to color theory. Color theory is studying how colors interact with each other and making logical, great decisions on how color works while you're using the color wheel as a basis for those decisions. There's a lot of other things that go in with colors. So what I wanted to do is I have to cover those before we get into our actual color theory, which will actually start the next period we have class. So today we're doing two things. I'm going to be talking about color theory. You're going to be taking notes, and then we're going to be painting in a color wheel. So two things are happening in class today. To be able to complete today's lesson, you need two things in front of you. First of all, this worksheet was given to you in your packet. If you do not have your packet, it's on downloads. It's not attached to the project. Like I said, sometimes when I make a worksheet, like actually I had to glue these down, the only way I can send the information to you is downloads. This one's under downloads. This one is attached. This is where you're going to be taking notes today, and this is attached to the information for today under the bulletin board. This one's under downloads. This one's on the bulletin board. You might already have this one. Nobody has this one. So you can take this one under bulletin board. You're going to be taking notes on this. So what you can do is either print this out and write on here directly, or you can type, copy it and write on it as a document and then send a link to it to me later with it. So does that make sense? Either way you want to work on this one, you're taking notes from me. Nobody has this, but you will find it there, right there on the assignment on the bulletin board. This one's under downloads. Okay, if there's any crazy reason why you can't print this out or use this today, then you just there's 10 of them, number 1 through 10, and then you can just write it on a piece of paper. This just makes it a little easier for you and a little more direct for you. I'm okay, just take notes on what I'm talking about. So I'm going to get into the content of what we're talking about today. I put this piece of paper here while I was talking about the worksheets just to have it be less distracting. So as I'm talking, you're writing notes down here. The first thing I wanted to mention about color theory is that you have a lot of artistic choices, even given within a certain amount of color range. For instance, they wanted to use certain colors here. We know that those trees are probably not actually bright purple, but because of the way the colors are presented, and it even looks kind of natural at first, artists can kind of stretch the colors or exaggerate the colors and get the colors to do what they want them to do. For instance, there's a lot of strong use of purple here, where in person it might be slightly more bluish, but still kind of pushing the colors in the direction the artist wants to go. This plant here is very blue-green, and they made the background, kind of the weeds around it, a little more towards the blue-green. Probably in person they were more yellow-green. So artists can change and move even when it's realistic, you can still adjust the colors to get them to do what you want them to do. People may not notice, or they might really like your interpretation. The other thing I wanted to mention, the next thing is colors have emotional qualities. Sometimes they make you feel a certain way. Like this makes you feel kind of cool because you're like at the beach. It's almost like you can feel like you're there because of the way they've chosen the colors. Colors like yellow tend to keep you awake, but you can live with a yellow. Something like a blue they often choose for a bedroom because that's a very calming color. The reds tend to like wake you up and pay attention, look at me. So you would never paint a bedroom red typically. In locker rooms, in fact, they even made this illegal in college locker rooms. They would paint the home team's locker room red, and then the visiting team would be like a really pretty soft blue. So it calms down the other team, and then it gets the home team all fired up. So actually knowing what the emotional qualities of certain colors are and then kind of exaggerating that can make a difference. The next thing I want to talk about is mixing or over mixing. When we're making colors, let's say I'm looking for some kind of yellow orange, but I wanted to calm it down a little bit, so I added a little bit of extra color. Sometimes after you've added 2, 3, 4 colors together to kind of create a color, sometimes you can over mix them. And basically you have all these little molecules of color, and the more you stir it around, the more they lock up. And so eventually I'm never gonna unlock those molecules of paint. And sometimes they can get what's called muddy. So you have to, when you're painting, sometimes if a color just gets kind of yucky on you, you know, it's just not a pretty color. Sometimes you need to just stop, get rid of your paint, start over, and try and mix not too many colors together on your way to a nice looking color. So you have to be careful about over mixing your colors. The next one, you'll notice white and black are not here on the color wheel. That's because they're not considered true colors. White is basically all light. You look at the sun, it has all the qualities of light. It's white, you know what I mean, as much as you can look at it. If you go in a closet, close the door and block out all the lights, you don't actually get the color black, but it's black because you can't see any light. So white, I guess scientifically, is all the prisms, all the colors, and black is no colors. But also when you're using white and black, they tend to kind of dull your colors. Now with watercolors especially, we don't use white at all. With other types of paints, we would use some white as needed. And because the white tends to dull and make things pastel-y, but you do need it in certain types of paints. And then with black too, if you can substitute, we've talked about it before. Here's some black and it looks great. But if you can substitute some other colors for black, like violet's used very heavily here. This is not black, this is just a very dark green here that they've substituted some colors in for the darks without having to use black. If you can substitute something else in for your darks, that works better. If you can plan on using your paper for your white and so on, that works better. So they're kind of special. They're not on the color wheel. It's just different. The next thing I wanted to talk about, so I'm working my way down the list, is aerial perspective. There's another thing colors do is that looking as you see distances, and we're actually going to study this later. This isn't part of what we're studying right now. But the whole effects of colors that you see up close and colors that you see far away. For instance, if I'm on the mountains, they're very brown and green. If the mountains are away from me, they start looking kind of violet. Colors are brighter towards me and then start getting dull. You can see this right here is dulled out a little bit because it's further away. This is brighter here, dulling out a little bit further away. So there's this thing that happens, and we'll study that. That's totally separate than the color wheel, but it is something that happens with colors. The color wheel. The color wheel is basically for artists. I have a giant one right here. So this is how artists work with color. This isn't really a scientific thing. It's just how the 12 colors fit together in a format that helps us use them. It happens to be a circle. In science, colors in bands. So you don't study color this way. If you see a rainbow, it's not a circle, it's a band. So it's just something just for artists. It's not really scientific in a sense. The next one is the artist's color wheel is based on 3 kinds of colors. Our primary colors, you probably learned this in grade school, are yellow, red, and blue. These colors cannot be created by mixing any other colors together. They are the basis for the color wheel. If all you have is these 3 colors and maybe a little white and black, you can create all the other colors you need. So they're the most important colors. They're the strongest visually. They're the most powerful. They're kind of the superheroes. The next set of colors are called the tertiary colors, or secondary colors. And these are direct mix of a primary color. So yellow and blue makes green, yellow and red makes orange, blue and red makes violet. Those are also very strong visually. They're very important colors, just not quite as strong as the primary colors. So they're called the secondary colors, the direct mix. The next group of colors, it has 2 names. It's either called tertiary or intermediate. These are the remaining 6 colors on the color wheel, and they're a combination of a primary color and a secondary color. They're actually really important for color mixing. You know, of course, there are many, many other colors, but the other colors that you're aware of are mixes of these colors and white or gray or mixing across and combinations. You know, for instance, coral is a very light red-orange color, and, you know, pink's a very light red color, and so on. But they're represented here. You just have to add colors to make those exact colors. Next thing that happens while we're on this part of it is browns. We don't really see browns here either, and there's different ways to make a brown. It can be over mixing, just mushing stuff around until you get one. But ideally, to make a brown, you just mix across. Yellow and violet mixed together makes brown. So what you do is you use opposite colors. For instance, here's a painting here with opposite colors, yellow and violet used together, and you almost don't realize how much they've blended them together. But anyway, you can get a brown. These are some classic browns. The yellow-violet mix tends to look kind of like a lighter brown like that. The red-green mix is a very dark brown like that. The orange-blue is kind of a sienna brown. But depending on your painting, let's say if you don't have to make your own brown, you just want to get a brown. So if I know I'm working on a violet type painting, I know these types of browns are going to be what looks good there, or just making my own brown. If I'm working with red or green, you know, I want a brown that's going to go with my painting. So I can probably make a brown easily to go with my painting, or I'm going to look for this type of a brown that goes with the painting. So being aware of how to get to the browns is very important. Really quickly, I wanted to mention, I'm trying not to let my video get too long, that there's, you can see on this chart that there's all these different things, monochromatic, complementary, cool, warm, and things like that. That's what we're going to be studying. We're going to be doing paintings with these types of groupings, and that's also what we're using the color wheel for. But since we're talking about it later, I didn't feel like I had to put it here. A couple terms for you. When you have a hue, that's just the name of the color. So you could say violet hue. Sometimes when you buy paints, that's what that means. Violet hue means the color of violet, or the hue, you know, blue violet hue, blue hue. That's the name of, you know, and however many words you need. We're just talking about that's the name of the color, is its hue. A chroma of a color is how intense it is. How strong is your yellow-orange? How strong is your yellow? How much white's mixed in with it? On this little diagram here, it's mixed with the opposites. So I have my brightest yellow-orange here fading down into a kind of a blue-violet down here. So, you know, how strong is my color? Pure color up here and slowly being dulled down or made lighter or darker. So chrome is the intensity. The value of the color, you know, is lights and darks only. So as it has white been added to it, has black been added to it, so lighter, lighter, darker, darker, and so on. So how light or dark is it, is its value. So these are art terms we'll try and use as much as possible. You should be familiar with them. Other things I wanted to talk about in this video. So we needed to write down some things here about what I was saying just now. We're going to be studying different types of relationships. See how all these things are colored in, all these little wheels are colored in? That's pretty much what's going to happen on these worksheets I've given you. Is we're going to be studying these different relationships of color, like analogous, that means 3 right next to each other, anywhere on the color wheel. Complementary, 2 opposites, anywhere on the color wheel. And we're going to study these one by one. To get this started, I want you to have a large color wheel just to help you have as a reference all the time. You're not going to have a handy-dandy chart like I have here. So just a visual reference all the time. You're going to need this color wheel painted in. So you have, you're going to be painting this for the second half of your assignment today. You have, I just wanted to remind you as far as your set of paints, that the one that has black on the end, black and brown down here. Now, if you notice this brown, we look at the brown chart. This is the brown that's kind of like a blue-orange mix, if you're wondering. So you might want to change it if you're not using blue and orange. Anyway, so these here with the black and the brown, these are your primaries and secondaries. So this is your bright red, your orange, your yellow, and so on. On this other one that starts with the red, red-orange here, this is yellow, orange, yellow, green, and so on. These are your tertiary colors, so your other 6 colors, and you'll be able to find these by figuring them out. They've added a color here, which is the turquoise, so that's not really on the color wheel, but this is great for using with skies. So you have to kind of look around it for your 6 tertiary colors. So like I said, watch out, the turquoise isn't really on the color wheel, as is. And then remember, I gave you a mixing red when you're painting and making your own colors. That's what this red is for. So in a sense, ignore this one, and those are and ignore the black and the brown. Those are going to be the colors you'll need for the color wheel. So they're ready to go. You're just going to paint all the colors in. I have a sample here that's painted somewhere in tempera paint, but it's going to look something like this. And then you're going to have your notes that are all filled out. So this is what you're handing in for today. So you can either, if you wrote the notes in person, you take a photo of both of them, hand it in. Today for your submissions for this assignment, if this is going to be given to me digitally from your own Google Doc, then I'm going to allow you for 2 submissions, because you can send this to me separate than this, but they count together for the points for today. Does that make sense? So it's either 1 submission of both sheets, or you can do 2 submissions, 1 for each sheet. And then I'll just open them and see what you did when you turn it in to me. So notes, paint your color wheel. That's it for today, and we'll get started with some paintings tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. That wasn't too bad.